Resident Evil 2 introduced us to a host of characters that would become fan favourites for years to come. Leon S. Kennedy, Claire Redfield, Ada Wong, Sherry Birkin, and, when players were done experiencing both sides of the story, they would be treated to one more. HUNK was the leader of an Umbrella Secret Service team sent into Raccoon City to intercept William Birkin and retrieve his G-Virus creation before it could fall into the hands of the US government.
I'm not handing over anything!
We have our orders, Dr. Birkin.
Even when his whole team is slaughtered on the way out, HUNK survives. That is, if players could make it through the hellacious fourth survivor mode that he starred in. But who was this mysterious man? And why has he got to be so obsessed with his extraction point? This is Boy Wonder Adam for First Aid Spray, and these are 5 facts about HUNK. Rockfort Island. Even though he's been part of the Resident Evil canon for over 20 years, we still know so little about who HUNK is. What we do know is that HUNK and the rest of his squadron trained at Umbrella's Rockfort Island Military Training Center, as shown in the file HUNK's Report from Resident Evil Code Veronica. The Japanese Code Veronica guidebook goes into a tad more detail, dating that his training began as late as 1996, just 2 years before he would be sent into Raccoon City to retrieve the G-Virus. It also let us know that he had a rival with Resident Evil 3's Nikolai for some reason. Safe to say it was a this room ain't big enough for 2 badasses kind of situation. It's not much, but it gave us an insight into the USS Commander and his history. What we couldn't have expected was that this would be expanded upon in, of all things, Umbrella Corps. After all, no matter what you think of it as a game, the plot detailed nestled within are indeed canon. Umbrella Corps tells us that during his time at Rockfort Island, racking up successful missions for his employer, HUNK developed a new fighting system called CQBZ, Close Quartered Quarantined Battle Zone. With the very real possibility of biological warfare in the world's future, it was an extension of CQC fighting, but with BOWs and infected enemies in mind, foregoing long-range weaponry for PDWs and shotguns, both smart and deadly. What's in a name? HUNK may seem normal now, but when you actually think about it, it's a pretty weird name. HUNK. I mean, judging from our brief looks at his face during his Resident Evil 3 epilogue screen, and from the model ripped from Resident Evil Outbreak, he's alright looking. Certainly no hunk. Clearly just a code name. The mysterious soldier's real name, much like his origin, remains a mystery. However, his reputation is far greater than any code name. As one of the most talented men Umbrella has ever had on the ground, HUNK often walked away from his dire missions as the only survivor. This would earn him a nickname Mr. Death, or the Japanese version, which is a far bit cooler and a bit less like a rejected Mr. Men book title, Grim Reaper. A perfect demonstration of both his skills in battle and his ability to survive the most extreme situations.
Guess there's no keeping down the Grim Reaper, huh?
HUNK, the protagonist. During the late 90s, Capcom had more balls in the air than a juggler at the batting cages. They had teams working on a slew of survival horror games including Biohazard 2, Dino Crisis, Biohazard Last Escape, and Biohazard 3. And no, those last two are totally separate things. Or at least they were at one stage. The Resident Evil 3 Nemesis that we know and love wasn't always a numbered sequel, and started off as a spin-off game. Instead, one of the ideas that stuck for a follow-up to Resident Evil 2 would go on to star the fourth survivor himself. Kamiya, who had directed Resident Evil 2, was intrigued by the character of HUNK, and we can assume thought it would be interesting to play a story from the perspective of Umbrella. All we know about the project was that it was set to be upon a cruise liner, and saw HUNK tasked with retrieving, surprise surprise, an errant sample of the G-Virus. It also would have used classic fixed camera angles and more pre-rendered backgrounds per room than ever before. Sadly, not only does footage not exist because the game didn't get that far into production, but concept art has never arisen either. Perhaps merely just a passing idea, but it is definitely one that has become the stuff of legend. Since then, HUNK has not really had any prominent part of the actual story of Resident Evil, despite fan speculations that certain characters are HUNK in disguise. In the shadows. With Hunk's starring role scrapped, the character has been relegated to a background player since then, appearing mostly in files and cameos. 7 years after Resident Evil 2, he was playable once more in Resident Evil 4's Mercenaries mode, but didn't make the jump to Resident Evil 5 or Resident Evil 6. However, rather interestingly, he was playable in both Revelations and Revelations 2's raid modes, where he was joined by his female counterpart and the winner of the first Aid Spray's Stupidest Costume Design Award from now until eternity, Lady HUNK. Ugh. He continued this trend of appearing in spin-off modes with the game that is basically an entire spin-off, Mercenaries 3D on Nintendo 3DS, and turning up in hero mode of Operation Raccoon City. But in terms of taking centre stage, all he's ever had is Fourth Survivor, albeit that's 3 times that it's occurred: the original Resident Evil 2, the 2019 remake, and in the Umbrella Chronicles retelling. Unless you've got a Game Shark or equivalent device and can pull his model out from the files of Resident Evil Outbreak 1 and 2, where he was designed for a cancelled scenario, interestingly with 2 totally different models, different stats and starting items, and HUNK A, where he's forgone the classic mask, is actually the 3rd most powerful character in the game. You will unlikely be playing HUNK in a starring role for a while. External missions. With Umbrella having collapsed at the start of Resident Evil 4, it remains to be seen exactly what happened to Mr. Death. While some clarification would be nice, it's clear that Capcom value HUNK more as a special attraction and want to be careful not to delve too deeply into the man behind the mask, as to not jeopardize the appeal of his mystery. That being said, HUNK has remained popular ever since 1998, and his instantly recognizable design has led him to showing up in several unexpected places. HUNK has made cameo appearances in other Capcom titles such as Tekken, Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, and he even showed up as part of a pack of DLC characters for 2011's Lost Planet 3. Most recently, he represented the franchise in the 2018 crossover between Resident Evil and mobile game Black Command, and was one of the many Resident Evil characters to make the jump to PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds Mobile. And that's 5 facts about everyone's favourite gas mask-clad Grim Reaper. What did you think of this list? Do you think HUNK should reappear in the ongoing Resident Evil story? And what other characters would you like to see us cover in the series? Subscribe to stay up to date with everything we release, and please comment below. I've been Boy Wonder Adam, and have a week.